Alright, so one of the things that I've realized about myself this year is that I have a lot of trouble using my voice, sharing my honest thoughts, observations, feelings, beliefs. And this is something I've kind of noticed for a while, and I've made videos kind of like this before. And I feel like I have this crazy perfectionism where I try and think of like the perfect title, think about where to shoot it. Normally I'm more isolated than this, so there might be some background noise and people passing by, but I think that's progress if I can still tap into my core, into my truth while people are around, although it might get distracting. But actually, I'll wait until they pass. It's way too distracting because they're speaking Chinese, and I speak Chinese, so I can't help but want to listen in. Even now, even with this, I in my head, I'm like, okay, I need to edit this out, or I need to press pause and then record again later. But what's the big deal, right? It's just 20 seconds, 20, 30 seconds. Space, time is good. Time to think, to process, to reflect. Everything is so fast-paced these days. No time to be in your own thoughts, to analyze, to interpret. Which I guess is part of maybe what this is all about. But I don't know. This might be kind of scattered, you know. I guess by the time everyone's seeing this, I'll have made and decided on a title for this. But I guess generally I'll just speak from the heart, and the title will write itself. But I think I'll touch on sort of my experience this year, traveling the world for a lot of the year, working for very little of the year, and I guess all my existential issues that have come from that. And just sort of talking on observations I have of life in the US, life around the world, and I guess the struggles I see. I don't know. I'll talk about a lot of things, but I guess I'll start with this year. So at the start of this year, so if you've seen my last video similar to this, where I talk about why I feel like I can't be happy in the US, then I've probably touched on a lot of things in that video. But I guess to provide some context, I am Mexican American. My parents are Mexican. I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, California, USA. I graduated from I believe it's the top public university in the world, University of California, Berkeley. And now, a couple years ago, I taught English in China for a year. And I think ever since then, my life has completely changed. And I can't go back. I feel like I can't go back. I feel like I'm struggling to make sense of everything I've seen and experienced, and what it means for me. for the people around me, for the world. But I guess focusing on this year. So I had taught China in China 2022 to 2023. I'll do a brief recap. From there, I created my channel while I was out there after a solo trip, and I really wanted to help people, I guess was the idea behind my channel name, A Stepping Stone. I wanted to be a stepping stone and to help people. I guess at that point that was all I really knew. And now I suppose I have a lot more of an idea about that, but I'll touch on that a little later. But essentially, I came back to the US and I just couldn't really adjust. I guess even the whole reason I went to China was because I felt like I couldn't really adjust to life in the US ever since like COVID. And I think this year's it's only gotten so much more worse, to the point that I don't know if I even want to be in the US at all anymore these days. But basically, after China, I did remote work. I was teaching as a reading tutor online. Did that for about half a year, up until January of this year, 2024, which is, I guess, where this all begins, at the 7-minute mark of this video. So in January of this year, I was about to start the next semester of my remote job, but I was pretty miserable. It was nice in that it allowed me to, I worked from like Mexico, traveled around, and it was flexible. It was really cool in that sense. But it still didn't feel right. And teaching was also cool, but I feel like everything's felt like a stepping stone onto something else. Like if I try to like settle into something more comfortable or more according to society expectations, this is what I realize now. But I would realize that I just felt some sort of like cognitive dissonance, just some sort of uncomfortability with my life, with what I was doing, feeling like it wasn't fulfilling, it wasn't really enjoyable. It didn't feel right, I guess, simply put. And so at the start of this year in January, I had that feeling with the remote gig still. So I quit with no real plan. I had saved a lot of money. Well, for being like a lower class American, I saved a few $1,000. And part of that was because I sold my car at the start of the year. It was just sitting around. There was no use in putting it on non-operate and on having insurance for it and just sitting around. So sold my car, and I went to back to China, to visit my girlfriend and to visit my friends that were back where I used to live in China, in Shenzhen. And I didn't really have a plan. I just figured, I have the money, like there's no real urgency in working. I can afford to take some time and reflect and just enjoy life, because I feel like that's what it's like. I feel like for most people, vacation is when you enjoy life and the rest of the time is, I feel like, for a lot of people, when we're miserable, or maybe just unhappy, maybe just comfortable, maybe just complacent with our lives, just floating by. And this is how I felt years ago, in part from the lifestyle I led just playing video games all day, had really toxic friends, and I just wasn't really doing any of the things I'd wanted to do, any of the things I'd set out to do with my life. It was just drifting by in quarantine. And so at the start of this year, I went to China. Me and my girlfriend were visiting Thailand for a wedding in February. And from there, life is a lot cheaper out there if you're coming with US dollars. So there was really I was already all the way over there. It's a 12-14 hour flight. So, we were like, wait, why not just keep traveling? And so in February, March, we traveled Thailand for a while, about a month and a half, I think. Then we went to Malaysia for a week, I believe, and came back to China. And so from February until May, I was in Asia, mostly China and Thailand, a bit of Malaysia. And I feel like up until this point, I had mostly experienced being in the US, being in Mexico, and being in China. Thailand was really neat, really interesting. It was my first real taste of Islam, being around a lot of Muslims, being around mosques, listening to the call of prayers, which are really beautiful, even though I'm not a religious person. But it was really nice to travel. I felt happy. I felt I could enjoy life. I felt like I could escape from all the expectations, all the ideas of who I am, who I'm supposed to be, who I should be, what I should do, what life should look like. And I think in the US, that's get a job, go to school, get a job, or better yet, go to school, go to college, get a job. That's what we were told. And then we could buy a house, we could have a family, we could do all these wonderful things. Woohoo! I think for my generation, that was the story. And I think also for my generation, I think more and more people are realizing that it's just not feasible, or maybe it's just an outright lie. And I feel like as I've spent more and more time outside of the US, I feel like I've had more and more of this clarity, this awareness of just realizing everything I knew, everything I believed, everything I thought was all within the context of one country. I think as an immigrant, as a son of immigrants, I think I've always felt a bit of kind of part of both worlds, but not belonging to either. And I've always been a very observational person. And so when I was in China in May, I experienced loss of a loved one for the first time. And I feel like it really it was, super intense. It was one of the hardest experiences of my life. And I know I've talked about this before, for those who have watched before, which is also, I feel, a product of my conditioning. I feel from trauma, from maybe society, toxic influences. I still have these remnants of feeling pressured, of feeling scared or anxious or doubtful or self-critical, worried, about doing things, perfectly, worried about saying things properly, worried about whether my thoughts and feelings and experiences are valid, which is crazy. Because of course they are. I realize that now. Of course they fucking are. And this is probably all over the place. I hope I'm making sense still. But part of being out in Asia, being away from the whole bubble of what I know, of people who know me, of people who have expectations of me, like I had this rare opportunity, or it seems rare, to spend so much time enjoying life and reflecting and spending time with myself and thinking about who I am, what life is, who I want to be, how people decide the life they lead, and also how a lot of people have no say in the life they lead. And the friend of mine who passed, her name was Alice. She was, I believe, 60 years old, passed from terminal cancer. And I think that was really what kicked things off for me, what threw everything into disarray, because I knew that she had shared with me a lot about being unhappy with the way she led her life, falling into pressure from her parents who she had a poor relationship with, and not doing as much of the things she would have wanted to when she was young, when she had the ability, when she had the health, when she had the time. And I think a lot of us, like, intellectually, we can all agree, like, yeah, time is limited, like, we should probably get to doing things, get to living life and enjoying life and doing the things that are meaningful for us in this life. Yet I feel like, I don't know if it's in the US, maybe it's just a human thing, I see it around the world, I suppose, but so many of us give up on what we want. And I feel that we give up on what we want for so long that we forget what it feels like to truly want. And I'm not talking about like wanting a PlayStation or wanting like to have a cool car, or to have a big house. I'm talking like deep, profound, personal, vulnerable desires, dreams of as kids, what did we want to do? What excited us? What amused us and sparked our curiosity about life and about the world? And I feel like that's something that in my own personal life, I used to have a very strong touch with that. I used to be very happy with myself, very proud of myself, very confident in myself, and very proud of the person I was, the person I chose to be. I didn't care what people thought, and not in like a douchebag way, not in a selfish way, but like if people judged me, it didn't faze me. And this is something I realized around the time when I was in China, especially after the passing of my friend. For a few weeks, really, I was in a terrible place, and I just focused on the bare minimum, taking it easy, just sleeping, eating, and passing the time, and relaxing. I would spend a lot of time walking outside, sometimes just sitting on a bench, sitting on a rock, just enjoying nature, sort of like I am now. And for weeks, if I don't know, probably not many people, but it's all there on my channel. Like that was around the time where I felt like I finally had enough space to realize that, I was not the person I wanted to be. And through travel, through spending more time with myself, and from my relationship, growing a lot from that, I realized there was a part of me that was just so suppressed and gone for a very long time. And this was something I realized around May. And so I started to do videos like this where, to an audience of almost no one, I would just talk, just say my thoughts. And, I did it for myself. I figured at that point in time, somehow, after a bit of time, I realized I had enough courage and confidence, and I knew enough of who I wanted to be, which was that same person who didn't care about the judgments of others, but yet it was something that really controlled me. And I knew okay, maybe it will help others as well if I record this journey. I didn't know where I was going to end up. I didn't know if I would succeed, if I would fail, what even is success or failure. But I just started recording my thoughts. And when I had things I felt like I wanted to say or share, I recorded a video. A lot of times at that point in time, that was really, really difficult. I think nowadays, with this, there are still barriers, but I feel like I've improved so much, and I knew that I would, but emotionally there was so much blockage, so much fear, so much pain, so much unresolved, unprocessed suffering is how I understand it. And I would, from there on out, I would just spend a lot of my days just existing, and I found that there was a lot of guilt and shame that came up, because in the US, we're taught, we should get a job, we should contribute to society, you should be independent, you should have a great job, have a big car, big nice car, a new car, fast car, big house, all these things. And I always felt like I didn't really believe in that. It didn't make sense to me to pursue and to value those things. And I think over those weeks I made a lot of discoveries, and I had a lot more awareness about life itself, life in the US, life around the world, life in China, which is beyond words can describe, far from anything you ever hear here in the US, which is why I've fallen in love with China, not the Chinese government, which I think when people hear, if someone says I love China, people are gonna think oh my god, blah blah blah, communism, oh my gosh, CCP. Not the government. The people of China have treated me with so much more respect and warmth and dignity than any fellow American ever has, I feel, honestly. And, I feel like for a very long time, I would be afraid to say such things. I would be afraid of people bashing me, judging me, criticizing me, threatening me. But it's the truth. And something I've realized this year is that no one can tell you what your truth is. No one can tell you how you should feel, what you should think, what your experience of something was. And throughout this year, I think, it has been a very hard journey, a very long journey. But I feel like every month, it's not easy. I have very hard periods of where I feel like I'm unbottling emotion from the past, traumas, fears, thinking back to, or just processing the emotion of times I was bullied or times people said shit that was just completely unacceptable, but I was too afraid to say anything, to do anything, to defend myself, to defend the people around me. And I feel like, around May of this year, I had started to set intentions. There's a video out there on this channel of me talking about who I want to be. And I'm very proud of myself to say that. I think I've made a lot of progress on those things. And I've thought about a lot about purpose and my life, my fulfillment, my ability to change the world, to make an impact on the world, to help people. I feel like these are all things that I wanted. At some point I wanted them, and I lived in accordance to that. But it was around May of this year where I realized a lot of the things about the person I wanted to be. I still wanted to be that person, but I think I realized that I was too afraid to be that person. I didn't have the courage to be that person. And I was like, there's this quote from Westworld. Shout out Westworld. It's a television show, or a TV series. And there's a scene where this guy is talking about being a child and going to a circus with elephants. And he talks about how his dad would bring him to the circus, and he was just amazed at how these magnificent creatures, elephants, huge elephants, were so tamed and controlled and afraid of the circus leaders. And he talked about how when those elephants were small elephants, I don't know what the word for a small elephant is, but when they were small elephants, they were beaten, but also like they had wooden planks, wooden stakes surrounding them, that they were like afraid to walk that perimeter, to walk out of that perimeter. I think it was that they would beat them. This is fictional. I mean, Westworld is a fictional sci-fi film or show, but I think, the idea still rings true. And it could actually be how circuses tame elephants, for all I know. I wouldn't know. I haven't really been to a circus in a very long time. But the whole idea was that these elephants are so mighty, so powerful. They could easily break those planks. They could easily kill the circus leaders. But from a young age, from the time they're little cubs or babies, whatever, they have been trained to fear and to stay within these parameters, these stakes, these planks, or face the pain of being beat. And I remember really resonating with that imagery, that analogy, because it felt so true to my own experience, in the sense that I feel like I was still so controlled and limited by all these beliefs, all these unprocessed emotions, all these thoughts, or thoughts of what people would think of me, and that kept me from being this monster, this, not monster, but this grand beast, right? And, I think at that point in time in this year, I realized I had enough awareness to know, okay, to know, I guess awareness and the courage to know, to recognize that I am afraid. I've been conditioned. I've been trained to fear and live in fear, and to distrust and to doubt myself, to criticize myself, to invalidate myself, to minimize myself, minimize my feelings, my thoughts, my experiences. And it was at that point that I sort of made that commitment to trying to undo all of that, and to return to being a person who I was proud of being, living a life I truly enjoyed, where I truly made an impact, that I truly loved and felt proud of. And really from there on out, I mean, it's funny because, I've thought about it this way, like, the way I've spent this year of my life would be an absolute shame to, like, the average American. The average American gets maybe a week, maybe two of vacation time in a year. And this entire year, of the whole 12 months, I've probably worked for about 3 of them. Like full part to full time, somewhere around there. Probably just 3 to 4 of those months. 8 months almost of being jobless, or just existing. I guess I was still jobless, but being jobless not because I couldn't find a job, but because I knew I didn't want a job. I knew I didn't want a job. It's not that work or jobs in itself are bad, or just like terrible, I think everything I've said and say are my feelings, my experience, my observations of the world. I'm sure there are many people who love their jobs, they love their lives, they love their lifestyles, they love their families, their friends, their communities. But for me, I felt that as I looked for jobs, for one, I was really burned out. And I think I mentioned earlier in the video, I was a graduate from the top public university in the world, UC Berkeley. At least at that time it was. I don't know if things have changed. But of all people, I thought that finding a good, well-paying job would be easy, would be a breeze. And over the years, I've noticed this shift, this pattern, even now, that so many, the thing that used to be a guarantee for a comfortable life, for a good job, enough to buy a house, start a family, have children, it's just not there anymore. It's not so attainable. And some people might say, oh, like it depends on your major. Like I studied global studies. So some people might shit on me and say, oh, like it's because you chose a useless major, whatever. But ultimately, it's not, it's not just me. It's what I've realized. I have friends. I have a friend, excellent coder, graduated with a computer science degree, can't find anything. I have another friend who's been job hunting for 2 years to find something in the area of his study. And I've read and seen more and more of these accounts of people, testimonies of people talking about how they can't find work, they can't find a job. I absolutely despise LinkedIn. The whole culture, everything just feels so fake and just like lip service to me. And I guess this ties into more my realizations now, where I came back to the US in June, did not adapt well again, went to Mexico for a couple of months, came back again, did not adapt well. It was even worse. I felt more disconnected, more I didn't feel like I belonged. I didn't feel like there was any lifestyle here that seemed right for me. I enjoyed being with my friends and my family, but I didn't want to get a job, not in something I didn't enjoy, not in something that wasn't meaningful and purposeful. And I felt like the effort you had to put in to find a job like that, most people are just trying to get a job at all. And it felt like so crushing and depressing to, I feel like I've always felt very strongly about upholding what I believe, even when it's, maybe to some it would seem unrealistic or it seemed like I'm being naive. But, I feel like I truly believe in the idea of being the change you want to see in the world. If not I, then who? If I don't choose to care and be the person I want to be, or do what I think is right, if everyone is afraid to do what they think is right, or to point, or to, even something like this, to use their voice, to speak our mind, I feel like a lot of my life has been marked by having something to say but not having the strength to say it. And when it came to work, I just felt this deep sense of uncomfortability, of I don't know if that's a word, discomfort, deep sense of just dread, just so tired of doing dozens and dozens of applications just to get a few interviews and possibly still not end up with anything. I mean, even the jobs I got and worked for a while, the remote teaching gig was $20 an hour, just above minimum wage here in California. And it was just so draining, man. Super draining. And, I think a lot of that is from my own anxieties and my fears and difficulty in speaking up and asking for help. And that's a whole other thing. But, I've realized as this year has gone on, I feel more and more confident and assured that I don't want a job, a normal job below my standards. I'm feeling pretty certain that I'm not gonna get one. Right now I'm working as a Spark delivery driver, so I deliver groceries for Walmart. very bottom of the barrel, like gig work. And last time I was in the US, when I came back from Mexico, like August to September, I was working as a Uber Eats driver into October as well. So, in the months where I have worked, it's mostly just been sustaining myself through low-paying gig work, which the craziest part to me is even with low-paying gig work, the US dollar is so strong in so many parts of the world. It's insane. It's really, truly crazy. And it's a true privilege. I don't deny it. I don't deny it at all. I think we live in one of the most privileged countries of the world. Yet, I feel like every time I come back to the US, it feels more and more dystopian. I feel like I can't unsee the issues and the problems and the uncomfortable feelings and observations I have, that in the past I had the thoughts, maybe the feelings, but I just I didn't have that courage to trust myself, to trust how I felt, to trust what I was seeing, and to call it out for what it is. And, I felt more and more disillusioned with the US and with life in the US with every time I came back. This last time, a couple weeks ago, maybe exactly 2 weeks ago. So after Mexico, I came back, I worked, and then I was like, all right, like, I've worked my ass off. I've made another financial cushion. I have a few $1,000. I want to get back to my channel, get back to myself, giving myself the space to continue growing as a person and continue shedding that old skin, is kind of the way I saw it. Putting myself in an environment where I could truly be myself and be cleansed of any ideas of who people think I am, almost. And so what I'm referring to, I went to China for a month and a half, and I went to Xinjiang, which is the most isolated, well, it's a very far west province of China. Very controversial, but that's not what this video is about. But I went because I had no idea what it was like there, and I heard a lot of things about it, but I wanted to see what life was like there on the ground by my own two eyes, my own experiences. And another part of it was I wanted to be alone, like truly alone. China, I have a lot of people I know there, mostly in like Shenzhen, my girlfriend in Qingdao, so all like eastern coastal China, but I'd never been to far west China, and this is the furthest I've ever been from anything I know, really. I spoke Chinese, so part of going there was because I would still be able to get around and be comfortable enough to like protect myself and make sure I don't get scammed or some shit. But I didn't know anyone anywhere in that province. I had never been. I didn't know anyone from there, and it was the most isolated I've ever been in my life. And it was incredible. It was amazing. It was hard emotionally. Some hard, difficult feelings came up, which, I think oftentimes we think that it's bad to be sad or bad to be angry, but it just is. It's just emotions. And a lot of this year has been marked by sitting with myself accepting how I feel, accepting the thoughts, just observing them. Because you don't, if we aren't aware of what we think, what we feel, what we believe, then we're not actually really in control of what we're doing. If you want to change who you are as a person, it takes thought, it takes feeling, it takes belief, it takes action, and that all plays into your identity as a person, and vice versa. But you have to be aware of what's already existing, what's already there, And so that was a lot of what my journey has been this year, is figuring out who I was, who I am, and whether that's who I want to be, and how it is that I want to change that, and how I will change that. And so, when I was in China a couple weeks ago, I wanted to come back for Christmas, for the holiday season. It's an important time in my family, as with many. But I kind of want to touch on, I guess this all connects in a strange way, because I feel like everything I've experienced this year leads me to feel this feeling that I just can't shake, this belief, perhaps, that the US, honestly, I feel like it's a fundamentally toxic place. There, I said it. That's something I never really wanted to admit for myself. And, I guess at the end of the day, a country is humongous. A country is massive. Your experience can be completely different depending on who your friends are, what city you're in, what town you're in, who you associate with. I'm not saying that the whole of the US is a toxic place and that people in general are really toxic and shitty and miserable and stressed. This is just my feeling. This is what I've observed, what I've concluded from my observations. And I think in the past month, I feel like I finally have given myself enough confidence to, and I guess compassion and trust, to believe in what is it that I feel, to believe in my observations, to believe in my thoughts. And so I guess where this all connects is, I feel like what I've realized is our lifestyle in the US, I feel like is fundamentally flawed. I think it's my belief that life is meant to be enjoyed. Life is meant to be meaningful. Life is meant to be fulfilling, at least in an ideal sense. I feel like some people have strayed so far from that, or they never had that opportunity, that privilege, because, certainly a lot of it is the privilege of being born into this generation where, my parents have already gone through that struggle as immigrants of, they went from being really poor, not being able to put the food on the table, not being able to have a comfortable life, to being able to do those things. That was sort of their dream, their end goal for their life, for their generation. And so something I've thought about a lot is, for a lot of us who are born in the US, I think especially if not from the son of immigrants, a lot of us in the US, we spawn into the world at a point where most of the world dreams of ending. we spawn into the world where most people in the world dream of ending up at, right? What I mean by that is, like, certainly there's a lot of issues in the US, a lot of people who are poor still even here, a lot of people who struggle, who, especially in the last years, I think are more and more under pressure, more and more tired and miserable and losing hope. And I feel that I have gotten distracted by bikes. Give me a second to gather my thoughts. I feel that I lost my train of thought. That's what I feel. I feel that I lost my train of thought. Can you remind me real quick? What was I talking about? Oh, thank you. I'm kidding. I feel that more and more people are losing hope and are getting pushed to the edge, pushed to the wall with nowhere to go. I think a lot of people in the US were born very comfortably. And I think it presents this new experience of life that maybe for millennia has never existed, which is, I feel like now in developed countries where people have a very high standard of living, it's not really about survival anymore. It's not about those basic needs, Even for myself, even in US terms, I'm a pretty poor person. I mean, I think with how much money I've made, I would be considered below the poverty line for this year. But my experience has been really good because I've made US dollars, but then I've gone abroad to spend it where it goes way, way, way further. But for the people who are truly poor in the US, working minimum wage, barely making ends meet, one emergency away from bankruptcy, from a life of ruin, I think there's a lot of those people who this doesn't apply to. They are really struggling, and I think that number is only growing. I think there's also a lot of people who have never truly struggled, not in a survival sense. And, for a long time, I observed this and I would think, like, it's very unfair and just crazy to me. But, where this is kind of going is I want to talk about the whole Luigi Mangione thing and the death of the healthcare CEO. And I will try my best to be honest and communicate it well. Because, talking about politics and things, I guess it's not, well, it's sort of politics, but talking about these kind of things, for a long time I never even dared get into it because, like I said before, I felt very afraid I was very afraid to be the person I want to be. I was afraid of confrontation. I was afraid of conflict. So I was afraid of using my voice out of fear that it would bring confrontation, it would bring conflict, which it probably will. It probably will, a video like this, but that's okay. I want to be able to engage that and handle that, even if it's uncomfortable. It's important, right? And it's important to use our voices. And oftentimes, we don't all have to use our voice, but sometimes, when someone else uses their voice and we believe in what they believe, we resonate with what they say, they're almost our voice. We use that voice together, And So I guess that's part of my hope for a video like this, is that people will resonate, take something away from it, and maybe I'm not alone in feeling all this and experiencing life this way, observing all these things. But so the whole Luigi Mangione thing, when I was in China is when I heard about it. Before, like just in those first few days, where all it was there's a manhunt going on because someone shot a CEO from the back. He had a suppressor. It seemed very premeditated, very pre-planned. But what really fascinated me was the shell casings, which said, I believe it's delay, deny, depose. But the media initially reported deny, defend, depose, which a lot of people use now. Whatever it is. And then there's also a book called, I think, Deny, Delay, Defend, about the healthcare industry. But I want to talk about this because I feel like it's opened up this huge conversation that in a way ties into everything I've talked about with feeling disillusioned about the US. And I feel like it's helped me realize why and understand why. And so I feel like, hold on. So basically, Luigi Mangione is the man that allegedly killed Brian Thompson, the healthcare CEO. And, this case was really fascinating from the get-go, really fascinating, really captivating to me. And in a strange way, really empowering and hopeful. It gave me hope. And so I'll say the obvious. Murder is bad. Duh. And yeah, I mean, it sucks that man lost his life. At the same time, I think a lot of times I wish we lived in a world where violence was never the answer. People say that. I used to feel that way. But in the grand scheme of things, I feel it's undeniable that violence has been absolutely necessary to bring about change. When many, many people have suffered, and when there's been no way to navigate that suffering. There's that quote, like, violence is the language of the hopeless, or something like that. Beware a man with nothing to lose. And essentially, I feel like this case has been really captivating, and it's given me a lot of hope in the sense that I feel like the US is extremely divided. And it's something that really just disappointed me and just made me feel so, at my core, probably very sad and I don't know, hopeless. I feel like since COVID, especially, a huge uptick in the political polarity, the left versus the right, Republicans, Democrats just going at it, throat to throat, and just seeing so much of the same shit happening on both ends. Just so much hatred, so much judgment. And I honestly feel that happens on both ends. And, I won't get too much into that. But I feel that generally the US is, I think less, maybe, hopefully, a very divided place. I felt like it was the divided states of America. And I felt like I had lost hope. And I feel like that's part of why I hated being here. I felt like the US was so fundamentally twisted and broken. And I have a lot of new thoughts about all that. Because I feel like what this case with Luigi Mangione showed, for one, it was extremely surprising to see both the response of the common person, the working class person, who I think for the most part everyone can agree that the issues at stake, healthcare, the amount of suffering by design that the healthcare industry brings to like the average person, not the average, to many of the average people, many common people. I mean, it's immense. It's immense suffering. It's heinous. It's criminal, I feel. And I think a lot of people are waking up to this. And not just that, but I think what really gave me hope is that I feel like more and more people, at least online, on Reddit, on YouTube, in the comment sections, that's the sort of the sense I got. More and more people realizing that a lot of people are just trying to divide us, trying to pit us against each other, trying to make us hate each other, trying to, the whole culture war in the US, just blaming everything on the Democrats, blaming everything on the Republicans, blaming everyone for voting for Trump, voting for Kamala, like not voting at all. I used to be someone who was so disillusioned from an early age of the US that I thought voting didn't matter. Then I had some political activism, a little political activism era, where with Andrew Yang, I felt very refreshed by his ideas. And, I feel that while I've voted lately, I still don't truly feel it matters. And I think most people have concluded that. And, I want to be hopeful. It's in my heart, it's in my spirit to want to lift people and to inspire people and to make people believe in themselves and their own worth beyond all odds. But honestly, I guess where this all ties in is I think the healthcare situation showed us that a lot of the things that are broken in this country, I feel like it's by design. I'm starting to feel more and more that it's by design. And, that's not necessarily a new concept. I think within smaller groups or circles in society, maybe more with like conspiracy theorists, there's ideas like that. But I just can't shake that feeling. I think with the healthcare situation, it's made me hopeful that people are realizing how toxic it is that a company has this conflict of interest where they're supposed to provide care, yet they're also under this immense pressure to make money. And, I don't think it's just healthcare. Honestly, I feel like in the government, it's on both ends. It doesn't matter which side. I think it's really a class war, as people are saying. I feel like it's the 1% versus the 99. And I'm starting to feel more and more like it's by design that everyone feels so defeated and miserable and stressed and unhappy and pressured, under so much pressure. What I mean by that is there's the healthcare industry, which is showing us how hideous it truly is to have a system where the priority is profit, not care. I mean, in the US, I feel like we accept things that are just disgusting, honestly. And I'm hoping real change can be brought about, because it's not normal. Most of the world, the US is on a lot of very strange lists that most of the world is not on. We're a country that prides ourselves on being the greatest in the world. But I feel more and more like the pride is just in the money we have, the display of the money we have. And, I feel like healthcare is one thing. I feel like for-profit, anything, for-profit prisons, I feel like there's such a conflict of interest there where there's incentive to imprison people. With healthcare, there's incentive to keep people sick. It's not an industry meant to create sustaining health. It's an industry meant to treat temporary sickness until you just give up through denying, delaying, defending, right? That's the whole idea there. Healthcare industries try to maximize the profits by denying claims, delaying claims process, appeals process, defending their positions, defending themselves legally in court. I think most people are waking up to that with healthcare particularly. I think there's so much more that is wrong in the US where we prioritize money over everything. And I feel like that's at the core of what I feel disillusioned with. It's showing now in politics, in the realization that Luigi Mangione is no terrorist. I really followed him. I in the early stages I was reading all about him, and in a lot of ways I really relate and resonate with him. And I feel like healthcare is just the tip of the iceberg. And I feel like what I truly feel and observe is that money is a plague. The pursuit of money is a plague. To the point where I often feel ashamed or just disgusted even at like the amount of wealth some people have, while millions, billions on the planet are suffering. And I feel like at its core, that's what we're conditioned to chase in this country, in the United States of America, right? We're conditioned to pursue money beyond all else, to buy things, to consume, to get a better job, to waste our life away, to make someone else rich. It's a rat race, man. Everyone wants to climb that ladder, the corporate ladder. I mean, corporate culture is just feels so fake, and it just feels so soulless to me. Even with how people talk to each other, HR, I feel like HR, human resources, is meant to protect the I don't know, CEOs, the companies, from liability, from accountability for what they do, the impact they have. And with the Luigi Mangione situation, it was so obvious to me, because I've been following it very heavily. It's so obvious how much mainstream media is trying to paint Luigi in a poor way, how they have tried to gaslight and minimize and reframe and invalidate him and his views, and the people who agree with him, the people who side with him, the people who relate with him. And I feel more and more like there truly is a class war at stake in the US and in the world, where I'm starting to feel that maybe it's by design. Maybe it's by design that we're all divided, we're all too tired, I feel like for me, I escaped the rat race, or I escaped the very idea of work. Why is it that we work? What's the idea there? Is it really worth working if we're not happy? Is it really worth slaving away at a job if we're miserable? I feel like fundamentally, money, cars, houses, none of that makes us happy. And I feel like in the US, we're so individualistic and materialistic and consumerist. And these are all things that fundamentally do not make us happy, do not make us fulfilled. It pleasures us, it gives us that dopamine hit, it distracts us. But I can't shake this feeling that so many people are miserable in the US. So many people are really stressed, really unhappy, and have given up. They feel hopeless. And, I feel like it's a scary thing. I don't know what will happen in the world in these coming years, but I feel like big change is coming. And I feel like more and more, it's more and more important to be honest about what I see and what I observe, and to share, because I don't think I'm alone. And I think it can really help people. And there's so much suffering in the world, even in the US. And I think it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. And when I would travel to like Mexico and just see the disparity in the average lifestyle here versus the average lifestyle in like a pueblo, it would make me feel angry and like ashamed. But at the same time, people in so much of the world are so much happier than in the US. Even though we have so much in a material sense. We have money, we have cars, we have games, PlayStations, TVs, boats, big couches, furniture, all these things, right? But so much of the world is so poor, yet so fulfilled. They're happy. They're rich in a different sense. They're rich internally. They're rich in connection, in community with each other, with the people they love and they care about. I feel like in the US, we're very individualistic, and in my experience, it feels very hard to build community. I feel like so many people walk around with a mask, and I feel like I've lived my life with a mask for so many years that it feels more and more obvious when I see it. And I feel like something needs to change. I feel like people are craving change. Maybe they don't realize it yet. Maybe this video will help in helping people realize it. But I feel like this is a huge issue. Once, for many people in the world, the first state of priority is survival. That's a huge issue for them. But in the developed world, I feel like, we have all this free access time and resources and energy, and it's plenty to give and to share. And I feel like we have such a privileged position to help others around the world. Not out of there's a whole idea of the white man's burden, not in a judgmental superiority sense, but I feel like we're rich beyond our needs, far beyond our needs. Many of us, like I mentioned, are really struggling. But I feel like fundamentally I don't agree with the idea of pursuing wealth, pursuing capital, pursuing material things, consuming. I feel like it's all a distraction, at least in my sense, And it's hard, I don't know, sometimes it doesn't make sense. This world doesn't make sense. It's such a crazy place, man. And, I'm not religious, so I think it makes everything even more absurd and just craziness, man. But, at the end of the day, I feel grounded in the belief in the hope. The belief that we're all human and we all share the human experience. And I feel like whether it all is meaningless or not, all we really truly have is here and now. And I feel like I've lived my life in a way for many years where I was not living in the here and now. I was not present in the here and now. I was not enjoying my life and feeling fulfilled in my life. And that is something I want to keep pursuing, keep dreaming about, keep chasing. And that's part of why my priority, I want it to be this channel. Not a job, not making money in some soulless job for a soulless company. I feel like I want to see the world prioritize humanity, prioritize meaningful, positive change and goals. I want to see incentives be human-centered rather than money-centered, And in my own personal journey, I've felt very limited in what I can do because, of course, we need money to survive for most of us. But I'd rather work a few months of the year and spend most of my time existing, growing as a person, trying to help people in their own lives to raise their awareness. It might not be the same answer as me. It probably, for many people, it's not the same experience, and I recognize that. But this is my experience. This has been my life. These have been my thoughts. And I want to be someone who can voice these things and have the courage to, the vulnerability to, and be able to share that with others, with the world. And everything I've talked about, a lot of it has been my experience as a person. A lot of it has been my observations of society, of other people. I think the crazy thing is that it might not just be the US. Maybe it's capitalism in general. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way humans are wired, but humans are the only animal on this planet that can go against their wiring. Because we got this. So, yeah. And I guess on that point, what I've described is mostly my experience with the US and how I see the US, but it's not just the US. I've seen it in China, many people suffering, miserable, stressed, especially with their work culture, which is so much more heinous than ours. Same in Korea. A lot of people are miserable and stressed and have come to accept that that's just life. And I think that's what I hope to change. And there's this idea, you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. So I want to commit and stay focused on my own life, my own growth as a person, being the person I want to be, leading by example, telling my truth, and hoping that people listen and people resonate and care and that it helps. Whether people listen or not, I don't have control over that, but I have the power to speak, and that is the power that I have wielded today and shared with you all. So yeah, it's December 30th or something. It's almost the end of the year. I feel like I kind of just touched on my whole year and all the vast amount of things I've wanted to say for a long time, but I've felt too scared to say. But it feels good to have said it, and I feel proud of myself for that. And much more work to be done, but that's life. It's a constant tug of war, the war of being. And I want to help people in fighting their own war, internal war, their existence, the war of existence, war of being a human. Alright, it's pretty cool though, being human. And with that, hope everyone has a great next year, and that you all trust yourselves, stay focused, that you feel inspired and make changes you want to see. Don't just, be comfortable and with your life. If you hate your life, if you're miserable, if you're stressed, it can be changed 100%. It's just a matter of will, of desire. Doesn't mean it'll be easy, but where there's a will, there's a way. I truly believe that. And I truly hope that I can continue to inspire people, because I have come too far to quit now. And I think from here, I only go further into living a life that feels right to me, and sharing that with others in the hopes that it can inspire and give you hope as well. So that's been my story, my truth, and there's more to be written, and I hope you guys can write your story of the story of your life. Continue to live it and write it, and yeah. All right. That's about it. Take care, and see ya.